to get started. Um, so I just want to give Shane a quick little introduction for everybody that doesn't know who he is. Shane is the current director of Studio Platts out in Colorado. He's a landscape architect and designer. He received his BA in biology from the University of Virginia and his master's in landscape architecture from RISD. He's working in several regions of the US, the Netherlands, and the UK, and has given him multiple perspectives on climate for design, pro-pedestrian allocation for spaces and ideas, and placemaking. He established Studio Platt in 2017, and after experiences with Nelson Bird Woltz out in Rotterdam. So Shane, go ahead and take it away. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Shane Fagen, like you said, and yes, I run a very small office in Fort Collins, Colorado. That's northern Colorado, if you're not familiar with it. Um, Been on my own for, which is crazy to me, about 8 years now. And part of why I reached out to Nick and UT Austin was I've been throughout my career, throughout the process of learning how this profession works, I've sort of been very interested in how software is taught starting at the university level, how that translates into the professional office workspace, and the kind of massive gap that's in between the two, whether that's limited amount of instruction time, overly high expectations on new hires, etc. So this is part of a larger effort and larger study I'm doing to understand how that transfer of information and retention of software information is happening. And I decided to offer up some free workshops. I'll talk about some of the other resources that I'm going to provide. And really, all of those are there to not only help you out, but to also give me an understanding of what students are actually struggling with day to day, whether it's um, uh, learning the software itself, workflows in between, just kind of getting stuck in a rut, and all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you can't figure out how to turn a layer off in whichever program. So um, these resource not only this workshop today, but these resources I will continuously be updating. Those are there to kind of help you guys not get stuck, keep moving, learn new ways of using these different software, and honestly, just kind of save you all some time, lower that hurdle of learning all the software, because that's not the important thing for you all to kind of pick up while you're at school. But unfortunately, it's pretty essential when it comes to getting your first job. So I don't think anybody should be leaving school being an AutoCAD expert. In fact, my my suggestion is never be the best person at any of this software in any office, because then you'll kind of get stuck doing that the whole time. But being pretty knowing these software, all the software well enough to understand that it's a tool to express your ideas, and being able to express your ideas cleanly, pretty clearly, and as quickly as possible, you will get more involved with the actual design process in any of the offices that you'll work in, because you'll be able to communicate your ideas. So outside of all the intro, I think we should just kind of jump right in. I think I'm going to need a good part of the hour to actually get through all of this. I'm also going to turn my camera off, because otherwise it's going to be in the corner of my eye and kind of bug me. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're going to be looking at some techniques and workflows that I think are probably the easiest to work through. And after a couple of tries, you'll understand the efficacy in them, and the reason for using this type of workflow of going from CAD to Photoshop. And then just some tips and tricks for both programs to kind of help yourselves um, and set yourself up for success. So a plan illustration is not a day-long exercise, but more maybe 2 to 3 hours, if that. Um, so first place I'm going to start, we're going to be working towards this image, and my website is like the last thing I update at all times. What I'm going to be showing today is an example of a style of plan illustration. Even I do several different styles depending on kind of what the reason for making the plan is it's supposed to be evocative? Is it supposed to be diagrammatic? What are we kind of working towards? So I don't want you to think that what I'm showing you is the only way of making a plan. I think bringing in your own style and different ways of expressing that plan illustration are important. But there's hand drawn, there's kind of cool little white background versions, really intensive or more diagrammatic, all those types of things. So I don't want you to think that this is the only way to produce a plan by any means. The techniques I'm going to show you in here, though, I think you can apply and sort of change your style in those, however you think best express your idea. First thing we're going to do actually is start in the CAD file. Big thing I tell my employees, anybody I'm teaching or giving tutoring sessions to, is really the best way. Oh, and as I'm getting started, if anybody has any questions as I'm going, feel free to stick them in the chat. I will answer questions as we go. I don't want it to get too far in one direction, and then we have to kind of either come back or we forget the reason for asking the question. So feel free to ask questions as we go. So the more you set yourself up in CAD, and this I think applies to 3D modeling, I think this applies to doing diagrams in Illustrator or setting up, even setting up presentations in InDesign. The more effort, the more detail you provide in your CAD plan, the easier it is once you get to the illustrative part. And what I mean by that is really making use of your layers and keeping in mind how you create your CAD drawings. So as I'm going, you're going to kind of see what I mean. The reason for doing that, the reason for being very specific with your layering is the way we're going to go from CAD to Photoshop is by actually turning a lot of our layers off, exporting a PDF, laying that PDF out in Photoshop, but as a linked PDF, not as an inserted, or you're not straight opening a PDF in Photoshop at all. Everything is linked. So what do I mean by that? Starting with this plan, this is basically, like you could see in here, it's a new park. Basically, most of this is new. You'll see as we turn the aerial on what its current coverage is. But the goal was to produce sort of a site-wide illustrative plan. This is all the line work that is going to be eventually showed on our plan. Hopefully you all already know how to set up layouts in CAD. Again, usually pretty easy. You just set up your sheet and your model view window. I've already done that. I'm going to assume that you all know how to do that as of now, but if you have any questions, we can touch base on that towards the end. So this is my 24 by 36 that I'm going to print, and then that's going to sit on top of all of my Photoshop layers. So I'm going to just hit Control P. I'm working on a PC. Obviously, if you all are working in Mac, hopefully you know those translation. I think most of the time I say Alt, it's Command, and Shift is Apple or something like that. So when I go to print out this layout, first let's make sure that we've got this set up correctly. That's probably why. There we go. I will be finding mistakes in my own drawings as we go. So I will comment on those as we go here and there. So issue with that was the layout was not set up correctly, but now we're good. I set up as window centers plot. So apply layout. I'm going to hit OK. I've already saved a version on my desktop. I do not suggest you save everything on your desktop. Figure out your own file system while you're in school. I think that's a good handle, but I saved this for us today. So I'm going to save over LSP Park. That means landscape site plan, park, and then the size. And then I'm going to hit yes. As that's coming out. So this is basically what we've got. Not a lot of detail in here, but that's what the Photoshop part is for. So I'm going to close this, and I'm going to actually turn off all of these layers. We're going to come back to these, obviously, but I'm going to delete that. So this is as if we've just started a brand new plan or a brand new Photoshop file. If you don't know how to do that, You can either go up to File New, or you can do Control N. That's going to open up this dialog, and you set your width and your height. That could either be by pixels, inches, whatever you're working in. Ours would be 36 by 24. That's a pretty typical plan size for like a large illustrative plan or a plan set. Resolution. This is another suggestion I typically make to people. If your computer can handle it, I try to draw everything at full size as much as I can, or sorry, full resolution as much as I can. If that needs to be downsized later, I can downsize it later very easily. Problem is, we can't upsize anything. So go at full resolution as much as you can, as long as it's not going to crash your computer. For example, the file that we're looking at now, it's actually a PSB file, which means it's so huge, it's like 3 gigs or something like that. So at the end, we'll kind of touch base on an easy way to downsize that if you need to, because this file gets pretty heavy. But if you're able to, start with 36 by 24, throw in a resolution. Rest of this is pretty much fine, and you would hit create. So this would be what we would kind of get right at the start. Ignoring the fact that we've already got other layers in here, you would normally just have your background layer, which I have unlocked. Control 0 is going to center your image. So if you've zoomed in or moved around and then you hit Control 0, that zooms in, centers your background. So as we go to place our image or place our plan, we know that's going to come in centered. So this is kind of what I mean. Instead of importing the PDF, I see a lot of students that are constantly importing and opening the PDF in Photoshop rather than linking it. You can get to the same result doing both. However, both in school and especially once you get into the working environment, you are constantly making edits. You're constantly making changes. A client will come back and they'll say, hey, we really, really like what you did. However, we decided to rotate everything 90 degrees. And you're like, oh, well, okay, I guess that's what we're doing now. So you got to go back and change everything. So saving as much work or setting yourself up as much as you can for those edits, both in school and in the working environment, it's going to save you time long term. So to place our image, if you're not familiar, you go to File, Place Linked. I'm going to go to where I saved my plan. We call it LSP Park 24 by 36. Place. You're going to get this dialog that's going to pop up. What I would suggest, actually, absolutely suggest doing this. Always change this from bounding to media box. The difference between the two of these, and we actually will have a border on the outside of our drawing, so it's going to automatically read the line work on there and center it. However, if we had a PDF that only had information over here, I know this is a small, if we only had information over here, but we wanted our full size PDF to come in, if you do bounding box, it'll limit the area of the line work that is shown and center that, rather than understand that you have technically a page behind it. So always change this to media box. That's going to read the full 24 by 36 rather than up to the border edge. I hit OK. That's going to come in. I just hit enter. I know it's centered because I did the centering, the Control 0 before I started. And we've got our plan. So before I start filling in some of these tones, to me, let's say we want to start with, I'm going to go to, I know we would be starting from 0, but I'm going to go to my ground group. Let's say we want to start with the road. So I've already got a layer for that. We're going to kind of use that as a reference, but start on our own. So let's say I wanted to fill in all of this road. Well, if I went to my wand tool, anytime you want to select within this line work, go back up to your, make sure your PDF layer is selected. If I wanted to fill in the road and I clicked here, I'm missing a lot of the road. So I got to kind of go around and click this little piece and make sure I'm not missing anything. And it can be a little tedious. You'll miss things. Sometimes you'll have areas that you end up coloring that shouldn't be colored, and then you got to go back and fix it. So what our workflow is going to do is, I'm going to go back to CAD now, is we're going to go into model space. And this is where I'm talking about layer management. Layer management is key, key, key. So let's say we wanted to do the road first. Um, Instead of going in and filling all of this in manually in Photoshop, which is going to take a ton of time, or doing all of your hatch, I think I have some hatches in here somewhere. Let's see. True color green, sidewalk hatch. Well, that's for the sidewalk, but to make a hatch inside this sidewalk, unless your line work, your border line work is completely closed, is a huge headache to try to fill in and make. If you do the point fill and you click inside, if you've got an XREF behind it, AutoCAD doesn't like that. If you try to trim certain things off of the hatch or make an empty space in the middle, there's a bunch of extra steps for that. The wand tool is a lot easier than doing all of that. So what we want to do is if we're going to use our road, let's see, this layer is called L. This should be EP, not LP. Sorry, I'm a stickler for layers. So this should be landscape, edge of pavement. EOP is a typical shorthand you'll see out in the professional world. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to layer ISO. So I'm actually working in Land Effects, which is going to look a little different from yours, but layer ISO, I think the command for that is LAYISO. Or you should have a button up here next to your layers that isolates. And it's this, it'll have a little arrow that's pointing down rather than up. So if I click on this layer ISO, and then I click on my edge of pavement, hit enter, basically everything other than this XREF, or I think it's maybe yeah, this is an XREF, so that's not going to turn off. Um, it turned every layer off other than the edge of pavement, which is what I want. So now if I go back into 24 by 36, hit Control P. Oh, before we hit Control P, one thing we need to make sure we do have as you can see, everything's turned off other than the edge of pavement. But I did make a border layer, which we need to make sure that we turn on. You'll see why, but this is just a border that I have on the edge. Thinnest line weight as possible. Hopefully you know about how index colors and line weights work. We can talk about that at the end if that's helpful as well. But essentially everything's turned off other than this edge of pavement, our border, and this XREF, which we could turn the XREF off if we want, but it's not really gonna influence the inside of our paving. So I'm gonna hit Control P again for print. Everything's set up fine. Save. We will be continuously saving over this file. I'm sure a lot of you all in the past have tried different versions of this. I know when I was in school, I tried exporting, basically doing what I just did, turning all the layers off, but exporting that as an individual PDF and then putting that into Photoshop. That's a lot of work. But if you just save right over top of this one, hit yes, I will print. And then usually as soon as you get back into Photoshop, it automatically updated. So it's already centered. We don't have anything else we have to do. We can make as many changes to our background as we want, but it'll automatically update every time we reprint, save over. Now, once it's in here, I'm going to go to, again, if you ever want to select in here, go to your actual PDF layer, and I just click in there. That's basically all my roads. Then let's see, we'll go to road. I'm actually just going to steal this color because I like the color that I had in there. Hit OK. So now if we were starting from fresh, we didn't have all of these layers. I would go down here to it's a circle that's got half black, half white on there. That's basically part of our adjustment layers. We go to solid color. And then really you can kind of pick, we need a brightness in here. Basically pick a tone for the road that you think looks good. Like I said, I kind of like the one that I had previously, so I'm just going to hit OK. And as long as you had that, oh, I've got everything turned off. That's why it's not showing up. Let's turn our, let's see, where are you? Ground on. Let's turn the rest of this off. And let's have our background. So this is the one I just made where it just says color fill one. This is the original one. So as you can see, if I had everything selected and then I made a color fill, it automatically added a mask to it. If you're not familiar with masks yet, I highly suggest you become very good friends with masks because they are your best friend. Um, the whole point of using masks, we're going to look at different versions of masks in here that are both over imagery, over full color fills, all of that type of stuff. If you're not familiar with how masks work, if I selected our mask here, I'm in my brush tool. You either hit B for brush or it's over here. If I have the mask selected and not the layer, or in this case, that's a color fill, but I have the mask selected, I'm pretty much restricted to white, black, or a grayscale color in my brush setting. Easy way to remember, white is on, black is off, or white is shown, black is hidden. So if I start drawing with the white, it's going to fill in that gray. If I switch to black, or you can hit X, that'll kind of toggle in between the two. If I go to black, I go right over top, and now it looks like I'm erasing things. I'm not. I'm just exposing or I'm exposing the mask. So I'm just going to get rid of all of that. And if you ever hold down shift and click on the mask, it shows the whole thing. So you can see this is basically filled other than I have a little mask on our group, but it's just completely filled with gray. And that mask that we had that was already selected from our driveway automatically trimmed everything out. I didn't have to do any trimming. I didn't have to do any additional selecting, anything like that. Automatically filled it in. So let's do that one more time with our, let's see, like maybe our pathways would be good. So once you got that in, you filled in your color. Don't worry about all the effects, techniques, anything like that. What I suggest, get all your base tones in first, then start tweaking them in relation to each other. Because it's more about the entire composition rather than one element or one layer. So I'm going to go back into CAD. I'm actually just going to hit Control Z a couple of times. Get back in here. You can always do layer unisolate, which is the one that's got the arrow up. But if you turn some things on, turn some things off, it won't unisolate. So I usually just hit undo until everything shows back up. So again, let's say now we want to do our walkways, which this, man, if you were in Photoshop and you're trying to trace this edge, that would take forever. I'm going to go to Layer ISO, click on here, hit Enter. These being closed are very important. So when you draw, anytime you're drawing in CAD, if you're able to close your polyline, close it. Again, it's all about saving you time down the line. So as you can see, all of these, as they come to crossings or anything like that, they have a closed polyline. Another big reason for that is if you ever need to do takeoffs, you need closed polylines to get area calculations, things like that. But again, so we've got all of our pathways. This XREF is still on, but it doesn't really affect any of our stuff. We might have to just touch that up a little bit, but I'm just going to go back here. Again, Control P for print, hit OK, save right over top of that PDF, hit yes. I'm gonna go back into Photoshop. Our road lines disappeared. So now all we've got, this is what we're expecting, and that's what we've got. So now we've got all these pathways. I'm gonna actually turn this is the one we made. So I'm gonna turn that off. Our path, I'm just gonna steal the color because I like the tone. And again, if we were making a new layer for our path, now, instead of clicking inside, maybe it makes more sense to click outside because we could go in, click here, click here. I mean, that's still pretty fast to make your mask, but again, it's kind of a lot of little pieces. What you can do, click in your negative space. We're going to have to fix some spaces in here. So hold out for that, but we can go ahead and click on a couple of these. Kind of bigger spaces rather than smaller elements. Then Control Shift I, or if you go up here to select inverse, That's going to basically flip my selection. So now it's only got the path. So that might have been a little quicker than clicking all the individual closed areas. I'm going to go back here. Let's say we're right on top of that. Again, adjustment, solid color. I'm just pasting that color in there, hitting OK. So this all looks really clean. This is what I was talking about of sometimes you got a little bit of cleanup you got to do. That's pretty easy. Click in there, brush tool, back down to your mask. And again, I'm not deleting. I've got my brush tool set to black inside the mask, and I'm just erasing. Or sorry, I shouldn't say erase. I'm just using the brush tool. And then let's just get rid of this one. So then I would just go back, turn my road on. Now, maybe it's I move layers up and down, things like that. So instead of going through each one of these and exporting all of those, that's the idea. Essentially, you're coming in here, you're turning everything off except for that layer. I think I even do this when I'm doing renderings and things like that. Layers to me represent materiality. So in my head, it's that it's sidewalk, but that sidewalk in this case, sidewalks are concrete. The drive or the road is going to be asphalt. So I'm already splitting those into different layers in both AutoCAD and in Photoshop. So layers associate to materials. Um, every single thing, I'm going to just delete the two that we made since we're going to start turning things on. But every single one of these layers, this one has a little effect. We'll touch on that at the end. Every single one of these layers was done by turning everything else off in CAD, exporting, saving over that PDF, and putting it over here. Sometimes I'll go in and actually and again, this is now getting to graphic quality. I'll do a slightly darker tone where I know that there's going to be some trees. If you don't know where the trees are yet, come back. You can always come back and add that. So every single thing in here, this lawn, parking area, all of that was just turned off and on and brought in from CAD. So I think everything's on in this group. We'll come back to the background here in a second. So before I jump to the next part, does anybody have any questions about the turning everything off in CAD, exporting to a linked PDF, and just you're filling using color fills and kind of going?
Hey Shane, I've got a quick question on I understand the workflow from the AutoCAD, saving over the file, getting those lines in, but I'm a little confused about the mask itself. So when you hit fill, right, you've say you've selected, you've inverted, whatever, you have the figure that you want. When you select fill, is it filling in between those dotted lines? And if that's true, then I guess when you showed the mask and you showed a full gray plane, right, and what was being clipped through, I guess that's what I'm a little confused about.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
So I think I understand what you're saying. So sorry, I've got a couple of extra things turned on here. There we go. So for example, this was our sidewalk version, right? So we went in here, we either select these individual areas, which should be closed, or we select the outside and invert it. Whatever you have selected that's internal. So for example, if this was my selection, it's going to fill the color inside this square, not outside this square. And then that'll be like, let me just make one. Just like that. So even though down here we've got a yellow fill, which means it's filled the entire, let me turn everything else off again. And let's get rid of that mask. So when you do a color fill, it just fills the your entire background with that. And then if you do that as you have something selected, it'll automatically select whatever's the inside part of that as the mask. So that means that on this yellow piece, I know this is really tiny down here, probably on your screen, but there's a white square inside the black border that's showing basically the entire background. So that's why that filled in right there. Does that answer your question?
It does. So simultaneously, the command that you're using with the white and black circle is both doing the fill, but also having the selection mask. That's
Yes.
okay.
This you need to have
Understand.
the selection. Yeah, you gotta have the selection set. Then you go down here to your adjustment layers and go to solid color, which is up at the top.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you.
Conversely, you could always do it this way and then use your wand tool. I just feel like this is a little clunkier to me. Let's say then this is your selection. You just delete that layer mask and add a new one. So as long as you've got whatever you have selected, as it's generating a background mask, that's going to clip off what you've got.
Great. Thank you.
You've got it. So anybody else before we move on to some more detailed items? I'm just going to talk about some individual layers in here and then start talking about some additional Photoshop masking, saving yourself time by thinking about larger areas, things like that. So again, all of this was done just by selecting, filling in a color. Then as you get all these colors brought in, that's where you start tweaking things. So I'm just going to we'll leave tree massing off. We'll leave that off for now. Let's actually talk about this background. So if I'm able to get a decent background, as in an aerial image, which I usually go through uh, Google Earth, the actual downloaded program, Google Earth. You can find a good size, really scale it to a high resolution. Again, bring that in here. As you can see, this is what the existing conditions look like. So we've got, actually, let's go back here. So we've got our full line weight. So again, I'm just going in here, Control Z till I've got all of my items. I will say for me to just do the ground, when I was originally doing this, for me to just do the ground part, having known that I have my AutoCAD layers all set up really well, really to get everything up to, I would say, not including the background, just all this fill, less than an hour. I mean, once you get into a good groove, you're really cruising, you're filling with colors, you can always go back in and add textures. Um, so let's turn these off and let's talk about the aerial. So right now, I usually always bring in a base aerial. Again, everything for me, I link as much as I can. It helps with the file size, all sorts of different things. So, and once I bring the first aerial in, again, placing, and then I'm just using the transform tools to scale it larger, get it sort of centered where it would be on the plan. I mostly link this up along the shoreline here. So I knew that most of my stuff was pretty much in place. Um, and then I keep that one down here just as either a untouched background, or if I need to go back and get the original file, it's there. So again, I try to keep myself open as much as I can for future edits. So if I ever need the original aerial in its original position, I've got it down here. I can always just turn it off if I need to. Um, but what I wanted to do was really kind of pump this water up. This project was in Tampa. Um, kind of brownish, not great looking water. And yes, we want to make sure we're representing actual conditions as much as possible, but sometimes you need to make a little bit of a pop on your drawing. So I decided to kind of pump the water up a little bit, which helped us out. So all I did was I made a copy of the aerial. At any point, if you're not familiar with this is after a couple years, I found out that this is a way to do it. This saved me tons of time. You hold down Alt. This is for PC users. You hold down Alt on a layer and then drag up. It makes a copy. Easy, easy, easy. Similarly, we'll see that up here. Adjustment layers, you also use Alt to influence the layer below. So what I did was I made a copy of this one into this layer. I then used same idea going from CAD to Photoshop. I was able to, we need to export our other drawing, don't we? Yeah, that's on. Let's get the full drawing out here. Save. I've still got it open. Okay, saving over. Back into Photoshop. So we've got all of our line work in there now. Let's not select that. Again, always got to go back up to that PDF to select. I select basically where the water was. I made sure that my line work worked with that. So I didn't have to go in and really cut in around all of these edges, anything like that. It's a bit rough. I'm sure I could go back in here and really clean this up if I needed to, but for the size of the drawing I was producing, again, always keeping in mind your actual size that you're producing. I could take 5 hours to like really mask this perfectly, but it's not really worth it. The client did not care what this looked like over here. They're really interested in what's over here. So always try to keep in mind what you want people to really focus on. So I just selected this outside or where the water was, made a mask for it. So that's what this black and white next to the aerial is. And then I just started kind of adding little effects to it. So let's look at what effects I added. So this is the original. I mean, this is not nice looking. Nobody wants to see that next to their park, even though that's the reality. So first thing I wanted to do was I used the clone tool to get rid of these boats. We ended up, I think, in a different version. We put our own boats out here, but it was just not working with what I was doing. So I decided to use the clone tool to get rid of those. If you're not familiar with how the clone tool works, just going to make a little example image down here or layer down here. You go to clone. And basically, there's a couple of settings up here. If you do current and below, whoops. Basically, if I hold down Alt, I get a little crosshair. And if I click anywhere on that background mask and then start to draw, it's just going to fill right in over top. As you can see, there's this other crosshair to the left, and I'm just using similar tones to kind of hide all of that stuff. I always put those on additional layers in case I need to turn them on and off. So that is what this layer 2 is. Then the next one up, combo of color balance and brightness and contrast. The color balance did a lot of heavy lifting for me right here. This is a color balance is a really good adjustment tool to get used to playing with. You don't have to add additional layers that's blue and then kind of make them transparent. This is actually manipulating the image below. You can find those. It's also an adjustment layer that's in here under color balance, hue and saturation, brightness and contrast are the main three that I use all the time to just tweak how the colors are looking. Additionally, what I did here is I made sure that these changes were only affecting that aerial copy that I brought in. The way to do that, because if I make these not for that layer only, this color balance change is, you can kind of see it behind, even on that little aerial. It's going to affect all the layers that are beneath it unless I make a mask, which masks on these types of adjustment layers don't need to do it. That's how I used to do it. Again, that's fussy. That's starting to then I got to highlight things, turn things off, all of that. However, if I hold down Alt and I make sure I get this little box with an arrow pointing down, if I click on the space in between, I get this little arrow right here. And that means that these 3 layers are only influencing this layer. They're not going to influence anything else that's beneath it. We're technically at the bottom of our layer chain down here, so it's not as big of a deal. But as you get into more complicated groups up here, that direct adjustment layer is huge. So that got my color kind of close to what I wanted. Then what I did was I made a copy of these 3 layers, which again, I'm going to turn this one off. Again, easy way of doing that. Select all the layers, hold down Alt, just move up a little bit, and it makes copies of all of these. And then if you do Control E, it automatically merges all of them into a layer. Reason for doing this is I want to kind of just make this look a little cooler. So I want to make an adjustment layer for all of those layers below. I know that sounds a little confusing, but it'll make sense here in a second. So if I've got this turned, whoops, let's just undo. Go. Okay, that was my copy. So basically all I did on this one was I merged those. Now that I had the brightness one, I put sort of like a little stipple effect on it. I think that looks cool for water. Again, this is me. You all can decide what your water should look like, but I like this sort of little dot stipply kind of look to it. And then I actually made it these up here, if you haven't tried these out, these are really great. These are I think they're called adjustment effects, something like that. It's a very easy way to sort of change the look of something without getting too bogged down in contrast, brightness, color, all of that. All of these are going to look different depending on what's above and what's below. So my favorite go-tos in here are usually multiply. That looks too dark for me. Screen's another one that looks too light. This is like the three bear type of situation. Overlay is a really great one. It pulls out, sort of increases the saturation a little bit, pulls out some contrast, a little bit of brightness here and there. And I always just really like how that looks. So all I did was I added a layer that's then influencing everything beneath it with this overlay adjustment. And then I've got all my whoops, we're still in clone. Then I've got all my water cut out in place. Again, not overly worried that it's on top of this pier because we have a color on top of that anyway. Water's our bottom group of colors. So I'm going to just close that group here. Let's turn all these back on. Kind of talk about any of these that are important as I go. The sand one, you can see I added a tone for sand. So this is just a kind of a light gray with a little bit of yellow in it. And actually clip that out. So in this case, I made a group of one layer. I'll do this when I need double masks. If you're new to masks, we're already on to double masks. So this, again, these are your friends. This original sand one, I'll turn this mask off. That filled in that group based off of line work and sort of edging. So I just filled in solid tone of a color that looked like sand to me. Then I made it a group and then I added another mask on top of that for the group because I wanted to maintain this original fill, but I kind of wanted to just go to my brush. I'll use this little stipple guy sometimes. Where are those? I think it's a dry. Maybe it's special or legacy or something. But I'll use these different brushes to kind of spatter or roughen the edge and bring some of the aerial through. So it's trying to avoid making it look like, to me, this is too diagrammatic as of now. We don't have that texture, we don't have that pop yet. So finding opportunities to bring existing conditions through while still having your colors in there, that would be the reason for doing these double masks. So again, all I did was I used this mask and a brush tool to kind of roughen the edge out, bring out some of these trees. Decking, start building up your pattern library within Photoshop. I just made this out of a regular wood pattern and then applied it. Again, all this, again, adjustment layers, also your friends. So instead of doing a solid color, I did a pattern on this one. It opens up. There's all sorts of built-in stuff that you can find in here. You can make custom ones, things like that. What's nice about, let me do that one more time. What's nice about the pattern is not only can I change the angle of the pattern, but I can also change the scale of the pattern as I go. So, and it's always live. So once I got this deck set, let's actually go into that deck. Probably this one. No, which one's this one? Here we go. If I went in here and I said, oh, actually, let's make these boards twice as big, even though I've got it set, I can just go in there, change the scale, changes the scale on the pattern. Very, very handy for certain types of materials that you want to show. And then obviously you can change the angle of it as well. So sprinkling in those patterns can be really nice. If your whole sheet is all patterned up, it's going to look really chaotic, but finding those opportunities where it makes sense to have patterns is always nice. So these are just different um, patterns that I have masked off because they're going different angles in some places. So I had to make a different pattern if I wanted the angle to change, and they couldn't be part of the same layer. Um, let's see. So decking's taken care of. Building, there was already a hatch that I got from the original surveyor who decided to put hatches on top of the roof, which is giving it this sort of quad look of the shadow. Um, what I'll usually do with buildings is I'll just kind of fill in either white or gray within the rectangle, add a drop shadow, which in this case, I use their actual drop shadow effect. If you don't know where that is, if you go to this thing that looks like a function symbol from calculus, you've got, we'll also go to inner glow here in a moment, but drop shadows in there. And if you're not familiar with the drop shadow, look at this little piece right here. Basically, I can change the opacity of it. I can change the angle. I have this based off of global light. So the all the shadows, if I have another drop shadow on another layer, it'll update that as long as we've got things coordinated with this global light. But you can kind of play with this, and I don't overthink drop shadow too much on plans that are covering this much ground. Particularly to me, I don't like that this is not joined to the corner. Shadow's not going to have this edge unless this is an absolutely massive eave. But again, this is a very small portion of this overall image, so I didn't go in there and fill in that corner. But drop shadows are nice because it starts to bring things and make things kind of jump off of the page a little bit, and helps your eye focus on certain things because our eyes are good at picking up on contrast colors. So you're going from light to a shadow, it starts to feel like it's coming off the page. I'm going to turn this mask back on. The reason I did a little mask on the ground was I had that original aerial over here. And I know that this will make a little bit more sense when we've got the trees in. We're going to touch on that in a second here. Is I wanted to show a little bit of existing context over there. So I left that masked instead of the lawn on that corner. I just masked the whole group that I called ground. So that's all my ground tones, ground fills, all of that. And I masked them as a group. Sorry, I know I'm going very quickly. I think this is being recorded, but I want to cover as much as I can in the time that we have. Okay, tree massing. This is very important. So what this looks like, so I have a group called tree massing. I also have a group called single trees. So what I did with tree massing, again, here's our aerial again. Let's turn our ground off and let's turn this off. So oh, I've got a whole bunch of stuff in here. What I want to show in here, so this is that original aerial. Even though we've got new roads going through all of this, that they're essentially going to clear cut the path of those roads. It's such a nice massing of uh, local trees. I know it's from the site, so I know the tones are right. I know the browns, the greens, everything in between is appropriate to Tampa. So I try to use local aerial imagery as much as I can. And I know that in the plan, all this is going to kind of be filled in with masses of plants. Now I could go in here and do each individual tree in here and try to make it look sort of natural. But really, I could just mask out a lot of this aerial and save myself some time. So all I did, if you hold down Control and then click on your mask, that'll show what you've masked. So I now have my kind of dashed lines going around there. So I just used that aerial and went in and just masked this out. That's it. And then I've got basically what this is well over half of my tree cover done with basically 1 to 2 images, rather than putting a bunch of stamped trees in there, because if you do a ton of stamped trees, everything starts looking stamped and it looks really fake. Realism isn't necessarily my goal, but nature is not always perfect looking. So I like having variety where I can have it, especially in an aerial image. Um, this one specifically, let's turn that off.
Hey Shane,
And
I have a quick question about
yep.
the masking for the trees. In like for instance, in the northwestern portion where there's like that island of trees in the like in between where the roads are, how did you go about like masking that lump? Are you using like a lasso tool to like um be able to like demarcate where you're wanting that to stay? Or I guess could you just talk about how you're starting to like mask what areas stay and which ones go?
Yeah, I'm going to make a quick copy because I'm going to turn some stuff off and show you what I mean by this. So how I originally started with that was I made the aerial copy, I got it into place. We're not worrying about the adjustment layers, the color balance, and the brightness just yet because they're linked to this layer, so it's gonna affect everything we're doing. So if I turn the mask off, you see that big group of trees that are in there. And if I delete the mask as if it wasn't there, all I would have done, and I like working backwards in a lot of cases with this type of stuff, but this is one where I would have wanted maybe follow this line. So you can go 1 or 2 ways. Once you have the aerial set up, again, put a mask. That's going to be the white square with the black circle inside. It's going to add this little piece here. Now from here, I can either go to my brush tool, again, B for brush. It's set to black. I can just start erasing stuff if I want to. So you could even start and say, oh, if we want to be really fancy, we could even go select our road. Again, I'm hitting control, clicking on the mask. That's got all of our road colors selected. I could just do this if I really wanted to, which again is nice and quick and at least gives me a starting point that I can work off of. Again, we did all of this a bit differently over here on the right-hand side, but I can use a previous mask to now make a new mask. So it deleted basically everything up to the road edge. Reason I would maybe not do this is because it's not going to pick up all this stuff in here, but they can kind of come in here and just use a different type of brush. Again, I really like using, I think it's a legacy brush. I think that's why legacy brushes. I like going in here. Where's my legacy, guys? Here we go. And is it basic, I believe? Where's my splatter? Sorry, I normally have this set up differently on a different machine. Where's my... Well, let's not bother finding that if we're not going to see it. Should be... Here we go. Splatter. Splatter 59. If you want to be really fancy, hit F5. Change this to shape dynamics, a little bit of size jitter, full angle jitter. Close that down. Now I can come in here, make this whatever size. As I'm doing this, it's actually rotating. The brush is rotating itself. So I could either hold it down solid, get rid of a whole bunch. I can kind of just come in here and click a little bit. So what I did over here is I probably just clicked on the edges a little bit just to bring it off the road. Creating sort of a rougher edge. But that's really all it is kind of getting your mask getting 90% of your mask set up as fast as you can, and then going back in here with your brush and just kind of doing a little bit of cleanup here and there. This is where style, your graphic preferences are going to come in. I'm sure for a lot of people, this hard edge would not be a big deal. For me, that would bug me. So I'd probably go in, maybe get rid of some of the, uh, give it a little bit of grass here and there. This is actually supposed to be grass on top, so we probably get rid of all of that. So it's really just going in, like I said, doing some touch up here and there, getting as much of your mask set up as you can to start with. Um, Last thing on this one is then I actually used a, where's my second one? I just made a second version and moved it because I wanted the same looking trees up here. So if I make this one, I think it's, oh, that's what I want. Turn this off and I just took the whole aerial, moved it up because I wanted this nice solid edge of trees. I know it's going to match because I can match everything over here. And you just cheat a little bit. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's get back to where we had everything set up without our copied version. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I was trying to find you, but yeah, that makes sense. I was
Yeah.
the using the brush to like clean it up is what I was looking for. So
Yeah, that's really the big key there is that sort of getting those brushes set up. So I hopefully didn't mess up my drawing too much by doing that. Okay, and
also,
then
just
we
really
need,
quick while you're turning things on and off, is there a location in where you're getting these brushes from? Or is there like a database from like Adobe Photoshop that we could download some of? Because like I've noticed that the Kyle brushes, I've worked an internship and they've had those same brushes, so I didn't know if uh they were from a database online that we could download them from.
that Kyle one, I feel like that came with my Photoshop update. When I am looking for brushes, I go to I think it's called Brush Easy. That's usually a pretty good one. Um, if you don't see like the splatter ones, if you go here to your little gear and do legacy brushes, I don't know why they just don't include all of those in the default anyway, but throw those in there. There's tons of good ones in there. I- just like in all the programs, there's like 1,000 brushes. I probably use 12 consistently, and just get really good at using those. And then also get really familiar with if you hit F5, it'll open up your brush settings and being able to kind of use shape dynamics. Scattering is another one where I use a lot, where it just sort of will cause some or create some variation on an edge, things like that. Um, so now that we got a big group of our massing trees done, we do need to go in and do a little bit of singular tree because we're not going to be able to just hit that sort of. I know this is basically parking lot, so it's not all that exciting, but we're going to have trees in there. Um, I try to, let's see, these ones, where are you? Here, let's go this way. Oh, it's down here. So there's some palm trees in there, it's Tampa, things like that. These should actually be linked. I think I've got the other ones linked. Where are you? Tree type. You can even link your trees in case you want to make a change to one that then affects all of them. These should be linked. I just must not have done it. But again, I'm not. Okay, these ones are. Um, but again, if you have one linked, you can always make a change to one. It'll affect all of them. In this case, not necessarily a huge deal. But these individual trees, if I group them, kind of how I did, tree type one, I can then add color balance, brightness, and contrast to the entire group. That way, they kind of all pick that up. But I'm starting to now get to the point where I'm looking at this as an entire um, uh, the comparison of the tree colors to the lawn color to the, as a composition. So all of these, I just basically would place a couple of them, hold down Alt with my selector tool. That's going to make a copy, drop another one. You can get through that pretty quickly if you're using your Alt and copying it that way rather than clicking here, Control C, Control V, and then I move it, and that can get very cumbersome and tiring. Where I think the holding down Alt and just move, basically once you get those double arrows, that means you're copying. Um, and you can then size them all a little bit differently or kind of play with them. But that's basically how I got these central ones done. But that out of everything was the most time intensive thing that I had to do for this entire plan. So finding ways to not do that as much as you can and rather find opportunities for larger massing. It's always going to look a little bit better. So that's why I try to avoid doing too many individually placed trees. Sorry, I know we're running out of time. Um, just about at the point where we can start touching up effects, and then if anybody has any questions, I just got a couple of talk about the resources.
Also,
So,
you are so fine. You don't need to rush. We can run a little bit over to get all the
oh, okay.
information.
All right. No, that's good to know. Um, so I basically have the drawing set. So even though I had a couple, ooh, let's not do that. So even though I already had a lot of this set up, again, this is a majority is just color fill, masking aerial images, masking color fills, and really relying on AutoCAD as much as you can because that saves you a ton of time. Now let's touch this up and make this kind of look like it pops a little bit more. So before I get into these kind of finishing layers up here, let's go back down to where is, I think it's road. So I like on my road to have a little bit of an edge difference versus the middle part of the lane. Um, Most of the time, I'm actually going to do the reverse of what I'm showing you. I like to have my edges a little darker and my insides a little light, but it just kind of, the overall image was somewhat dark. So I actually switched it to an inner glow. So again, this is one of those, you would just select your road, go to your effects, go to inner glow. These are all worth exploring and messing with, and you'll figure out your own ways of what you kind of like doing. But basically what it opens up is this dialog. And what this does, again, blend mode, just like we had our blend mode over here, this is going to have screen, overlay, those types of things. Their defaults are going to come up. And I would usually stick with what they have as far as their blend mode, but you can always change it if you want, play with it. But basically what this does is this is going to add, as you can see, it's going to add a tonal change at the edge of my mask. So if you can imagine, if you weren't using masks to come in and get this effect where either you have a darker, if this was black rather than white, and we change this to, I think we would need multiply for that one. Yeah, darker edge. Some of you may prefer that. To me, it looks like it's a little bit more of a shadow. But to make that effect, if you did not have a mask, would just take absolutely forever. It would take a really long time. This is really if you've got it set up the way that or you just like the default, or you know to just tweak the opacity a little bit or the tone. This is a 30-second fix that really makes your drawing pop in a lot of places. So that's an effect. Any of these effects are definitely worth trying out, but applying them to a masked layer is definitely worth a try because just interesting things happen when you do that, when you start mixing up effects and masks and things like that. So again, all I did was I added one little extra aerial copy over here because this was not coming in dark enough because I had opacities on other layers that were showing the aerial. So I added one little one here, so that kind of jumped out. Another thing I personally like doing with my drawings is, to me, this looks too glossy as of now. It still looks a little clean. And a quick way to sort of make something look even though it's all in Photoshop, look a little bit more hand done or a little bit more textured or a little bit more real is I add a full screen noise effect to the entire thing. The easiest way of doing that, rather than adding noise to individual layers or trying to do something weird where you merge all the layers and then add noise to that one individual image, or save out a JPEG and then just add noise to that, I like to have as much done in the same file as possible. Basically, what that does is it changes. We're going to actually go in and edit our parking lines because they're a little light. But basically what that does is, for me, that starts to make especially the road, the asphalt, look a bit more gritty. And of course, we're zoomed way in. This is way past actual size. We're at 148%. If we did, let's see, view actual size, we're about here. So this is, for me, this is if I printed this out at full size, this is kind of what I look at. And I can just barely see the noise. And for me, that's exactly what I want. I think it looks good on roads. I think it looks good on lawns. It makes lawns all of a sudden, without doing 1,000 stamped pictures of an aerial lawn. Color fill, noise, you're good. You just that's very quick solution and it always looks really good. So to make that, I'm going to turn this off. Let's say we're starting here again, just like what we've done on a lot. Solid color fill. I'm going to make this 50% gray. That's important. So we want over here, change this to 50. That means you got 50% gray. Equal amounts white as black. Hit OK. So that's going to give us a color fill with a automatic mask, but we're not using that mask for anything. Then with this layer selected, filter, noise, add noise. It's going to ask if you want to rasterize or convert to a smart object. Convert it to a smart object. As soon as you as soon as you rasterize something, you kind of can't go back and change it. Again, it's all about keeping yourself open for edits. So I'm going to do convert to smart object. That's going to add my noise to it. This window will pop up. I always switch from uniform to Gaussian. Again, just something I've always done. I think it looks better. Change it to monochromatic, so it's just black and white noise. And then really this part, again, maybe set your sheet up so it's actual size on your screen. Just kind of play with this number. Like if we made this 100%, that's way too much noise for me. I think we had it 12.5. To me, that looks really good, but you might want yours to be a little bit more grainy, a little less grainy. All that's up to you. But Gaussian, monochromatic. For this one, I'm going to put it 12.5. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm just going to click on our other one. We had a blend mode of linear light on this one. So that's not even one of my favorites. But what that's going to do is it's going to start. I believe what linear light does is it makes anything that's white see through to the next layer, but leaves the dark color or the reverse. I can't remember. It's one or the other. Again, this is why you just kind of click through these things. But so linear light is right here. That works pretty good with the noise one. You could try if, maybe to me, multiply is going to make it too dark. Color burn does this, whatever this is. So it's just kind of about getting it in there, figuring out which blend mode is going to pop the way that you want. In this case, linear light is exactly what I want it to look like. So I'm just going to click that. And then that's done. That's it. So 50% gray, full fill, add your noise, figure out basically your noise percentage size. The percentage relates to the size of the noise. And then put some sort of blend mode on here. Try starting with linear light. That usually works really well for me. So that's I'm just going to delete that extra one. So we've got our noise turned on. And then last thing I'm going to do up here, just because we had a bunch of layers on top of layers and we were masking big aerials and things like that, I'll do just a little border fill just to clean that edge up and make it look crisp, make it look professional. Just like we did with the roads and all of that kind of stuff, I clicked on our PDF, wand mode. We had a border edge in there, so I just clicked there. You can see that that is the only thing that's highlighted now. And I made a white color fill. That's it. So you can't really see it in here on that mask, but if I right click on the mask, that's the only thing that's selected. So that's just a little border, clean everything up. But then again, I'm not deleting, I'm not changing other masks. So if I need to go back, make an edit, it's there. This border is just kind of floating on top and it's there for you to either turn on or off or whatever you want. Then from here, it could be whatever other changes you want. You'll get input back that, hey, there's too much color. Let's desaturate it a little bit. You could either desaturate the whole image or you can go in and tweak the water. But because you have all of these set up really well, and again, I don't know if you noticed, label all your labels or your layers. It'll save you headaches along the line. And especially once you get into a professional environment, you might not be the only person working on this. So really, just like in CAD, being really dedicated to making your layers as clean as possible. Your coworkers are going to love you. Your colleagues are going to think you're like super professional. they appreciate that type of thing. Similarly, sometimes you have to send files out to other disciplines, civil engineers, architects, things like that. I'm always doing my best to make us all look as good as possible because sometimes everybody doesn't care about the landscape architect, but I want to show them, hey, we're right there with you guys. We do quality work as well. We also send you really professional files. Everybody loves that. Um, so in a very rapid way, again, I think this is being recorded so you can rewatch. I also have a similar video to this, basically using the same background on YouTube that you can review and watch as well, because I know some of these steps go a little fast. Speaking of that, in the chat, and this is right after, this is the last thing I'm going to cover, and then any other questions we can go over. These are in here. I talked to Nick about we have a Discord software support community that we've started. Basically, from let's see, you're an hour and ahead of me, so
Hey,
from
Shane,
9. Yep.
resend those. It seems like the people that might have joined the Zoom after might not have the links. I'll also, these will be sent out in our Slack for everybody, so everyone will have
Okay.
those. And then I'm gonna talk to Shane after this, but depending on how he feels, some of it might live on our link tree. And then they can always have access to maybe at least the Discord through our link tree. But those three links will be made available to you guys through our MLA Slack after the recording.
Yeah, for some reason it's not letting me copy and paste those, so I'll just have to add those again. Um, But essentially, this is a community we've started. It's all free for you guys. Between, I believe it would be 9 and I think 9 and 6, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I just have this open. If you have a software question, jump on here. You can ask me a question. It won't be as in depth as like an hour-long tutorial, but let's see. We had a guy come on and he goes, he was asking me about clipping planes in Rhino and how do I get an image that kind of looks like this? And I said, okay, well, kind of, he showed me an example of what he was working on. I typed out sort of, here are the main commands you want to use. Here's how you set up clipping planes, things like that, pretty quick. So, and again, he came back, asked more questions, and it's a dialogue. I'll say, hey, try this out. If that's not working, try this one. Or just to get you going in the right direction. Again, it's not full tutorials all the time. Those are also being posted. But if you just find yourself getting stuck or you see, this is a good example. You see an image that you're like, man, I really want to figure out how to do something like that. Jump on, I'll point you in the right direction. If you get stuck in some weird little block issue in CAD and you're like, it won't go away, I can't jump on, ask me. I've had all the same problems you all have had, so I've had to work my way through those. And I think it's easier just to kind of talk through it with people. Similarly, we're developing when I'm not on, so sometimes you all are going to work late at night. We're also developing some uh, what do they call learning language models. So if you come on, you go, well, Shane's not on. How do I connect two surfaces in Rhino? Or this could be for any software, really. We're developing all of these, but how do I connect two lines? So he put into CADbot and it spits out a pretty good. Not all of these are perfect yet. We're still kind of training it, but they're pretty good little step-by-steps if you get stuck and it's during off hours. So way you would do that, let's say we're in CAD, you go in here, you'd say slash CADbot, how do I package a CAD file? And it thinks a little bit, and then it'll spit out an answer. It should be saying something about e-transmit when it gets there, but let's see what it said. Oh yeah, nice. Okay. Package a CAD file, use e-transmit command. So again, I think all of this is not specific enough, but if it's off hours, you find yourself stuck in a position of something, here's a resource to come check. There's a lot of bad videos, a lot of bad advice out of there, or things from AutoCAD forums from 15 years ago, and the commands have changed. So This is something we're going to be updating. More questions, more activity we have on here, the better all of this is going to get. So feel free to join that. And then in addition to that, we've got a channel we've started. These are going to be small snippets on how to do things, and then like larger videos that's like, yeah, how do you go from AutoCAD to Illustrator? You know, a little bit more of a walkthrough, something that doesn't fit into our larger courses that we also offer, things like that. I'm trying to do as many of these as I can. I'm juggling this with my own office, so but trying to get as many of these out as we can. And then last thing we've got would be we do have some courses. We're working on a Rhino one right now. We've got AutoCAD ones. If you actually want to understand how you use AutoCAD in an office, this is all through an office lens. Here's how you set up multiple drawings for a construction set. I know I was not taught this in school. Not everybody is. It all kind of depends on your program, but I know CSU is the university that's nearby my office, and they're running into situations where people are even trying to get internships, and they're like, unless you know how to use Rhino, don't even apply. Which to me, I think that's a bit rude, and I think a bit of a big ask for students. But if you ever need extra help, if you're struggling getting jobs or anything like that, you can come on. These courses are available. Discord will always be available. We even have we'll have this for Rhino as well, but even for AutoCAD, there's tier 3 where there's actually check-ins with me. And at the end, I will give you a recommendation to an employer. I'll say, yeah, I went through the whole process with them. I can say that they know X things because I'll say from the hiring side, you don't know how good anybody is at any of the software until they're working in your office. And it's I know it's stressful from the employee side. It's also a bit stressful from the employer side because you're like, man, I'm going to give this person a salary. I don't know if they're actually really good at CAD. So there's options in here that I can actually vouch for you if you go through the whole course. Um, so those are those resources. Nick's going to share. I'll also kind of add these in here as well. I know that was a lot and I went very quickly, but does anybody have any? It could be questions about this. It could also just be a random question about something else. Open for whatever. Oh yeah, last thing about the Discord, like we don't just have software stuff on here. I'm doing job listings and we post like entourage stuff, plan random things for Photoshop or 3D modeling. Um, what we're working on, what other people are working on, just all sorts of things related to the profession. If you have a question about your portfolio, just how do I lay this out? I need help. One of your instructors aren't available, or you feel a little nervous talking to them, jump on here. I'll talk to you about your portfolio. I have some specific comments on most people's portfolios, things like that. So yeah, trying to help this out, provide more free resources for everybody. But I think that's everything I've got. Yeah, if there's any questions on what we covered, anything else that we can talk about for a couple of minutes, if it helps anybody out, we can do that.
Yeah, I will say, Shane, you mentioned about the portfolio and the job listing thing, but as we were kind of vetting whether we wanted to do the tutorial and stuff, I went into the Discord and I was snooping around in the Discord, and it's very helpful. The job listings that they post are like, since Shane is in Colorado, they're not Austin or even Texas specific. There are a lot of people in our program that come to UT out of state. So this is a really good resource to be able to find kind of those jobs quickly. And also, he didn't mention, but he has linked to tutorials that he has given similar to
Oh,
this
yeah.
within the Discord, and I've like skimmed some of them. Very helpful. And like having this as a resource, I think is very beneficial. Even like the entourage and all of that kind of things are really good to like download as kind of a big package and be able to have those as a suite of uh, things to pull from as we go through our educational career. But I don't think
Yeah,
the
and
crowd
it,
in the
it
room
it's
is thinned out. So
the
go
little
ahead.
bit.
Sorry.
oh, that's fine. I mean, you're welcome to communicate all of this later as well. But yeah, more activity on here means more because if somebody comes on and goes, "Hey, do you have this type of vehicle?" I've got a huge library. I can't just dump everything at the same time. But if if somebody's looking for something specific, I might have it, or I can point you the right direction. I know where all the bad sites are. I know where all the good sites are. So I can help kind of guide through that way as well. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think unless anybody else has any other questions, it was fun to go through all of that. Hopefully it was helpful.
Oh, it was so helpful. There was stuff
If,
that I had been
anybody has,
taught. There's been stuff that I'd been taught and didn't know the rhyme or reason behind it, and I learned some of the rhyme or reasons today. So it was a very helpful tutorial for today. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, this is
it could be a 6 hour thing, but we
Oh,
jammed in as much as we could. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
no awesome. Thank you so much, Shane. I really appreciated it. It's interesting. Do you ever use Illustrator? I'm just curious. Just yes or no.
Yes, I use Illustrator primarily for diagrammatic elements. So, and in a lot of cases, I'm always trying to get as much usage out of what I'm making spread out. So, for example, I don't know if I've got all of that in here, but I don't think I've got all of that in there for this project. But this is all Illustrator work for a community campus master plan project that I did up in Wyoming. Um, in some cases, I took my illustrated plan, again, placed it into Illustrator, diagrammed on top of it, so, like this. I kept this one pretty simple because we had other flashier looking things, but anything that's for me diagrammatic or anything that I need to keep vectorized, I do in Illustrator. There's a lot of good things you can do in there, but the fills are a little tough or can be a little tough in there because when you go, and I've got a video for that, even I don't have a permanent solution for it, but a lot of times if you go from CAD to Illustrator, your arc and your line will all of a sudden just not be connected anymore. And it drives me absolutely insane, and it'll drive you absolutely crazy as well. So unless I'm doing kind of lighter diagrammatic work, that doesn't happen when you go into Photoshop. So I like to do all of my illustrative things in Photoshop and all my diagrammatic things in Illustrator, or
Great.
even
Thank you.
InDesign if it's appropriate. Like you can do a lot in InDesign as well.
Yeah, actually, someone ran across the issue of CAD to Illustrator and breaking those curves, and it actually was Kyle in the studio with us, and we had to like go from CAD to Rhino, Rhino to Illustrator to be able to get all of our like vector line works to be the same and like congruent across. So
This video right here, which I think I'm also definitely come to the YouTube stuff, but I'm going to be re-uploading a lot of those because I'm taking out the little part in the beginning. But this CAD to Illustrator one touches on that, and there's a few export settings you can set that will alleviate a lot of those. Not all of them, but a lot of those with closing and joining and things like that in AutoCAD.
okay.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Shane.
you.
This was so helpful.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I appreciate you reaching out and setting this up for us. It was incredible. And we will most definitely stay in touch about maybe having one of these again sometime soon.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to you. Different programs or that want to have workshops. We're doing it in different ways. CSU, they had somebody was going to teach Rhino over there, and then she's on maternity leave. So we're doing a three-parter that's a little bit more spread out. And then other groups are something kind of isolated like this, where it's about workflows. And then other ones are kind of big Q&As of, hey, I got stuck on this random thing. Can you just help me out? Hopefully the Discord can fix a lot of the Q&A stuff. But yeah, if you all find yourselves like, hey, everybody's having problems with this, there might be a better way. feel free to reach out and we can talk through it. I can make some suggestions and that sort of thing.
For sure. All right. Well, thank you so much. You have a good rest of your
So,
night.
outside of that, everybody who joined, thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you all in the Discord and all that kind of good stuff. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank you.
Shane.
See you
around.